Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1997 film Perdita Durango. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I'm going to give a special shout out to Seth for requesting this review. If there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below. Now, this is one of those films that to me fell completely under the radar. I mean, it didn't even get a release in the United States until 2 years later in 1999. And when it got its initial release, it was direct to video. It was by a company named Apex Entertainment, if I remember correctly. And it was a censored version of the film. So it wasn't until very recently when Severin remastered the film and released it on 4K and Blu-ray where American audiences actually got to see the film the way that Álex de la Iglesias intended the film to be seen. And it's also the first time you were able to see the film in widescreen and really get to appreciate its scope and its size and its grandeur. And this film has issues. For one, I think it's paced a little bit too slow at times. It does suffer from an instance of having too many things going on, and it tries to be a jack of all trades, and at times it succeeds admirably, but there are other times where it falls short. And it's one of those movies that is definitely a hard sell, and it's not going to be for everyone because it doesn't really have any characters that you really root for or are really likable or ones that you connect to. Well, I mean, actually, no, there's one character that I would say is pretty likable and you connect to. So there is at least one or two characters that you're able to have some sort of connection with. But there's a lot of focus on characters that are just awful people. So I can see that being a turnoff for a lot of audiences. But all of that being said, this film is fucking bananas. This is a wild, crazy ass movie. And I don't want to sit here and say that I loved it because it did have some issues and some moments where it kind of lost me, but I really liked it. I thought it was still a really good film despite the moments where it's uneven and it's not quite as smooth of a ride. The film was directed by Álex de la Iglesias, and I thought he did an incredible job directing this movie. The direction is dynamic, it's slick, it's stylish, it's inventive, it's wild, it's insane, it takes all kinds of risks. I mean, from the very beginning of the film, you have a shot with Rosie Perez in a dream sequence staring face to face with a leopard. I mean, this shit is insane. And it just gets crazier from there. The action, when it is there, it's fast, it's furious, it's brutal, it's intense, and very violent, very visceral. I mean, there's blood sacrifices, there's all kinds of really fucked up shit. I mean, there's a whole thing about these characters taking a semi to Las Vegas that's full of baby fetuses for cosmetic use. So they would be ground up and put into cosmetics. Like, it's a really out there movie. And I love that about the film. I love the fact that the film has swinging huge balls and it's not afraid to go places that a lot of other films would not go. It's a big selling point for me. And the direction is just as renegade and just as rough and tumble as a lot of other aspects of the film. But not in a way where it doesn't seem polished or it doesn't seem like you have a director who knows what they're doing. No, This is a masterful job by Álex de la Iglesias. I would say it is arguably his finest hour when it comes to his directing. I recommend this film alone just for the direction, for the way that he's able to handle such a difficult subject material and showcase it in a way that is infused with a lot of comic book energy and makes a film that has a lot of really dark shit into a fun ride for the most part. It's written by Barry Gifford, David Trubea, Jorge Guerreca Chivarria, who also worked on Dave the Beast, and Álex de la Iglesia. Now, Barry Gifford is the original writer of the source material for the film, the novel, Perdita Durango, and he was asked to write the screenplay for this. And his script, for the most part, the entirety of it is essentially edited and rearranged by other writers. So he's credited, but really not a lot of what he wrote is in the actual film. And this screenplay, there are some moments where it's a little too much. There's a little too much going on. There's too many characters. There are things that are brought up, but then don't really have a resolution. And that can be a little frustrating. Like I said earlier, the characters are not likable. So at least the ones that it focuses on the most. So that can wear a little thin. But there's enough moments where things are broken up and really crazy, wild, insane things are thrown in there that it still maintains your interest and captivates you for the most part throughout. And I actually like the fact that it focuses on these really despicable, uh, awful people, and it gives them personality and charisma. So it makes it so the scenes that they're in are not boring because the way that the film handles these characters, the script gives them a lot to work with. So you really are able to see Rosie Perez as Perdita and Javier Bardem as Romeo just sizzle up the screen in the scenes that they are in. They have really great chemistry, and a big part of that is not only due to the two performers, but also to the script because it just gives them so much for them to send sparks off and all over the screen. Now, one other part of the script that I just love the fact that it has a bit of horror in there because there's blood sacrifice and you have the character Romeo who's known for being this um, witch doctor in a lot of ways, just a very spiritual kind of killer and sadist, and it's inspired by a real case, and it's a case that in itself would make for a good film, to be honest. Just focusing on that instead of a more fictional take on it. But you have these main two characters. You have Perdita Durango, who gets picked up by this really crazy psycho Santeria priest who hacks up corpses while snorting cocaine, and they fall for one another. And he's got this job that he's given by this gangster named Mr. Santos to transport refrigerated human fetuses to Las Vegas, where they will be used to make moisturizer. And Perdita then comes up with this plan where they would kidnap some a gringo so they could sacrifice him so they could have good luck and prosperity and power on this scam, on this mission. And they kidnap a college student, Dwayne, and his girlfriend Estelle. They torture them, they fuck with them. They eventually make a choice to who's going to die, and then shit go really hits the fan, and their hideout is ambushed by the FBI and the police because the FBI is also hot on the trail of Romeo. And so you have this FBI agent who's just trying to take him down. Actually, I think it's a DEA agent. Yeah, Woody's. He's from the DEA. So you have the DEA really hot on their trail. So they have to stay one step ahead of the DEA, and Woody, who's just headstrong and will not stop until he nails Romeo. And then there's some double crossing, some other things that go on. Romeo's brother decides to double cross him in the end, and it ultimately leads to a bloody shootout and so on. So there are some predictable elements when it comes to the story for sure. But there's a lot of satisfying stuff. I mean, Woody does get his man, and there's a lot of really ambitious, interesting elements as well. Like how it incorporates Veracruz and Old Western into the film is just brilliant. Especially in the end, where Romeo becomes the character in that film that he idolized and he always wanted to be ever since he was a kid. I thought that was just a really cool use of effects. And for a late 90s film, I think it still holds up really well in terms of the effects. And you know what? I really do like the ending a lot of different ways. It's satisfying in the instance of Woody gets Romeo, the bad guy, gets their comeuppance, they get caught, uh, and Perdita, she's left having to deal with the fallout of all of this and her decision making, and also the two people that they kidnapped, they don't die, they actually get away, which is different for this kind of film. They both escape with their lives. The one thing I didn't like about the ending, though, is that you have this character who's the boss of Santos, who's the ringleader of all this shit, and there's a scene that shows him essentially sexually assaulting a young girl. You don't actually see it, but it's definitely there. It's 100% implied that he made this girl give him a blowjob, and it's just really all kinds of fucked up. And I thought if the film was going to go there and showcase this guy as this really despicable, awful piece of shit, that you would see him get a comeuppance. You know, he would get fucked up royally by Perdita or Woody or something, but that doesn't happen. The guy's brought up, you see the scene, and as a result, it just feels tasteless and just really wrong and just really cheap shock value. So I don't like that scene one bit. I don't think it was needed to anyway, but if you were going to go there and you were going to have the cojones to go there, then you got to have a payoff. You can't just throw that out there and then do nothing with this character ever again and not see this character get drawn and quartered. Like, it is just, I just don't really feel that that was a good decision by the writers. And I have to admit, there are some moments with the two that are kidnapped where the film just dwells on that stuff a little bit too long, with them hanging out with Perdita and Romeo, and it's trying to do something different by having some kind of relationship that's kind of built between the characters. It's trying to do maybe a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, but it doesn't really pan out that well. And I don't think the way that those characters were written really did the dynamic between them and their kidnappers any favors. There are some moments where the film focuses on that, where it starts to run out of steam. It picks up a little bit near the end, uh, especially when Woody is just determined as all hell to take down Romeo. And I would say the stuff with Woody is some of the best parts of the film. I would say if you took Woody out of this film, this movie would not be that great. It's his dogged determination, his honestly almost Captain Ahab levels of obsession with Romeo that is just the most captivating parts of this film. Other than the moments where the film just embraces its insane, wild craziness. The performances by the cast are just first rate, really good stuff. Rosie Perez, I would say this is one of her best performances, hands down. It's a very risky kind of role for her and for anyone. And she just did an amazing job. It felt very authentic. It didn't feel forced when it comes to her character's behavior and her way of handling things and how she falls for Romeo and the relationship that she builds with him and how she is understandably pissed and just frustrated and disappointed when things don't go right between the two and he fucks her over. Um and speaking of Romeo, I mean Javier Bardem, you can see why some people saw this film and thought that, man, this guy is a firecracker. This guy is somebody that is pure dynamite, and we need to keep an eye on this guy because he's got some serious potential to be a really big star. And this is one of those performances that is just so captivating, and you were just drawn to every scene that he's in because he just goes so into this role and just goes all out and just handles things with just a crazy amount of abandon, and it's just amazing to witness. Despite the fact that there are some moments where the line delivery is a little stilted, a little stiff, and I gotta be honest, the haircut was kind of a bad choice. It's really stupid looking. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of fucking mullet. It really didn't help make this character seem intimidating. Kind of made him come across as a little bit more of a joke than I think maybe they intended. But maybe that was the point. They wanted him to have a stupid haircut. I don't know. But there wasn't like a moment where somebody makes fun of his haircut and he fucks them up. So I think, and that's honestly a bit of a missed opportunity. You could have someone like, oh, what the fuck? Look at you with your stupid looking fucking mullet. Like, what? Who the hell cut your hair? Did somebody cut your hair with a fucking weed whacker? Get the fuck out of here. And then he just fucks them up with a weed whacker. Like, that would be fucking hilarious and just crazy and insane. But no, we don't get something like that. But the scenes that we still get with Javier are just really stupendous stuff. Harley Cross, who you might recognize from films like The Fly 2 and The Believers. He plays Dwayne, the geeky college student that gets kidnapped. It's nice to see Harley Cross here again, and he does fine with what he's asked to do, but the character just it isn't a character that's really that interesting. It's a very boring character, and so is Estelle, who's played by Aimee Graham. Both of them, though, do a good job with what they have, which isn't much. There isn't really a lot of meat on the bone for these characters. It does have some moments where it does try to make them interesting by making them into some really selfish bastards where they are willing to sell each other out for survival, but that only goes so far. If you take that away, they're not really that interesting. But James Gandolfini, it's another actor that you could totally see after this film came out, was destined for stardom. I mean, this performance is fucking awesome. It's amazing. It's terrific. Every superlative, every word you can think of for great is something that applies to this performance by James Gandolfini. I mean, I recommend anyone watching this video to see this film just for James Gandolfini's performance as Woody. It is so fucking good. He just commands the screen with his presence. He's funny. You love the guy. He's the hero. Really. He is the hero of the film, and you just love every scene that he's in, and you love the fact that even though he's getting his ass handed to him throughout the film, he's getting bones broken, he's still the one at the end that gets the last laugh. He's still the one at the end who gets his man. Screamin Jay Hawkins, it was fun to see him in the role that he had as Adolfo. He definitely was having a blast with the role, and as a result, it's a really fun performance. Damian Bashir plays Catalina. Carlos Bardem, who plays Reggie, who is Romeo's brother. I thought that was a nice bit of casting because they actually are related. I think they are brothers uh, in real life. You also have other actors like Don Stroud, who played Santos. Santiago Segura, he had a bit role as Shorty D. You have Álex Cox, the director of Repo Man, as this useless goofball FBI agent named Doyle, who almost fucked everything up by himself because of his incompetence. And that's honestly the main cast. There are a few other people here and there, but that's the main cast that the film provides, and it's a really good cast. And despite the fact that, yeah, some of the performances aren't the best, they aren't as top notch as the others, the ones that get the most screen time, the ones that are the real main focus of the narrative, they shine, and they shine really bright. The film also features some gorgeous, just really nice looking and impressive cinematography by Flavio Martinez Labiano. It's also really finely crafted in terms of the editing. It's got some really nice editing. There's a lot of scenes where a lot of shit is going on, things are going to hell in a handbasket, and the editing is very tight, it's very precise, it's very calculated, and the music, when it is there, I'm not going to sit here and say the score by Simon Boswell is one of the best scores you will ever hear, but it's still a really good score. I would say it's one of his more underrated scores. It really fits the film well. There's some really epic moments with this score that match the epic sequences that are going on the screen really well. Overall, I think it's definitely his most mainstream score in a lot of ways, despite how this film is anything but mainstream. The score definitely is a little bit more mainstream than compared to his other work. In the film, yeah, it's a little bit too long at times, 126 minutes. I think it could have been trimmed at a few points. But for the most part, it's still a pretty breakneck, wild, insane ride of a movie that it was bumpy at times, but it was really fun. It was really fun to watch. Very unique, very different. I would say if you're looking for something completely out there, unlike anything that you normally see when it comes to a crime drama, if you want to see a crime drama from the lens of someone like Frank Henenlotter, I, this is the film for you. Um, it's one of those movies where I do agree with a lot of people saying it's destined to be a cult classic. This is a film that, in my opinion, should have a cult following because there's so many things about it that just scream cult classic. So, yeah. And Severin did just a really stellar job with this release as well. I mean, even if you don't get the 4K release, the Blu-ray still has a really nice looking transfer. A lot of good, interesting features. Some of them are shorter than others. Some of them really aren't that great, but for the most part, though, really interesting stuff. And by the way, the real life murder case I was talking about early on that I didn't really throw in some details on, it's the Matamoros murders. That's something, and there was a cult. I believe it was in Mexico, and they did some sacrifices and some really messed up shit that was inspired from films like The Believers, which is really interesting because Harley Cross was in The Believers. He played the kid in that film, and then he's in this movie. But I would say the AV Club puts it the best. I mean, puts it the best. I'm my bad. Utter moral depravity. A demented movie that takes the oversexed surrealism of Wild at Heart to delirious new levels. It richly merits a cult. And yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, 100%. Check this film out. It's on Tubi. I think you can stream it on other platforms. It's a movie that I definitely would recommend anyone seeing at least once who loves cinema, because it's at least going to provide you with some visceral thrills and with some really wild, insane directing and some great performances. And that's what a lot of people want out of a film. And I think it delivers when it comes to what you want for the most part. There are some times where it falls flat and it falters, but for the most part, it crosses that finish line with gusto. So anyway, thanks for watching my review of Perdita Durango, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.